Hi, this is Mary Lurson, Executive Director of the NAMM Foundation, coming to you from the NAMM Show here in Anaheim, California. And we're in the middle of Saturday, the third day of the NAMM Show, and we've just completed the grand rally for music education. And our special guest today was the tenor crossover trio FORTE. So they are here with us for Talking at Music Education. Thank you. We're a podcast of the NAMM Foundation, but also coming to you live on Facebook at EnterTalk Radio. So please let people know the FORTE band, there's a fan base out there, right?
Sure, absolutely,
Big fan. Let them know we're here.
We will. We will post that to our FORTE family.
Yeah,
That's what we call them.
let's just do a quick round robin. Tell us
Sure.
who you are.
My name is Josh Page.
My name is Alok Kumar.
My name is Zach Page.
So we have the Brothers Page here with us.
We have
and
Brothers
another-
Page as well, and Zach Page actually produced our most recent FORTE album
Right,
called.
and was on stage with us in a whole high-tech setup, making a soundtrack. And there's another member that's not with us, so it was a trio, definitely.
Absolutely was a trio today.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
Thank you.
So we billed you as the classical pop
Yeah.
crossover tenor experience. Forte!
You mind if we steal that?
Yeah, please do, but I need a ticket from somewhere.
I appreciate
right?
that. Yeah.
But it was just great. You guys kind of overcame the audience with phenomenal classical tenor singing. First of all, it was you were. So tell us, let's start with that. Let's talk about your origin stories. I mean, you are trained singers, right?
Absolutely.
You are like the Olympic athletes of the vocal cords.
And that's what I compare classical singing to. It's something that you never stop training at any point of your career. You always need that input because the voice never stops growing. It always continues to change, and you're always adjusting and learning new techniques to match where you happen to be in life at that time. So it is the Olympics of vocal, I'd say. Yeah.
I can't agree more. That's absolutely what it is.
Right. It was like a decision to say, I found something here that has this facility. I feel it in my heart and in my soul, and I'm going to find a teacher, or you find teachers, right?
Absolutely.
Teacher trained,
Yeah.
right?
And there's so many different teachers, and you find the one that really corresponds with where you happen to be at that point in your life, and developmentally what they happen to specialize in, and if they can bring out that part of you that can release an overtone out into the
Right.
world, because that's really what it is, right?
So are you still studying? Do you
Absolutely.
Still go, so what's that
Yeah.
like? What do you do every week, every month? Do you just check in with the teacher?
Well, I mean, I kind of have an irregular schedule with them because it depends on whether you're traveling. I mean, my primary teacher is based in New York right now, in Manhattan, and so when I'm back, I have an opportunity to see him generally twice a month for financial reasons. Otherwise, I'd be there every day.
Right.
But it kind of but it becomes a little bit more sporadic when you're on the road. Fortunately, my teacher will Skype lessons. I can always text him if I'm having an issue. I'll say, and the nice thing about it is that after so many years of working with someone, they really know what the issues are and where they may come up, and so they're like, okay, we kind of work through this, and here's a good tool to.
So is it kind of like that tune-up, right?
Absolutely.
Exactly.
So the things that need tuning up it has to do with, I'm sitting very straight now. I'm talking with singers, right? I mean, it's like, it has to do a lot with like body tension and the mind-body stuff. I mean, what you listen to when you sing, is it?
I think
take
that's
us
a
inside
huge
the
thing.
singer's head, guys.
Yeah, I mean, there's a misconception that singing comes from the vocal cords when really the singing comes from the body. So the condition of the body has just a tremendous effect on what a performance's outcome is going to end up being. And and not only do I do lessons every week when I can of course afford and when I have time to, but also acupuncture, and there's different things that can help deal with tensions that have a dramatic effect on vocal potential. And I've been blessed to be able to do that pretty regularly, and you go and you start to see a roster of people that go to the same acupuncturist and the same voice teacher, and there's a network of people that are headlining artists throughout the world, and those are kind of like their secret weapons.
Right. All that body work, the Alexander technique,
Absolutely.
a lot of
Absolutely.
right,
Absolutely.
right.
And further to that point, it's one of those things where, and especially, I mean, there's the aesthetic of it all, but the practicality is, I mean, our bodies are our instruments. It's the whole thing. And, I guess you get to the point where you're finding that there's a lot more less even in terms of working out, if you work out in a certain way, it's less about bulking up. It's less about, getting jacked and huge, and more about building a functional, useful, sense of physiology that can support, whether it's, a lengthening and a softening of the muscles, a usability as opposed to just the aesthetic.
Yeah, like gyrotonics as opposed to like beefing
up,
Yeah,
right?
Because if you
Exactly.
tighten your chest, then those muscles correspond with the lung channel, and you will feel a shortness of breath where you
Right.
need that extra, that extra space to
So
go
when are we
across.
going to get the video bodybuilding for singers? Yeah, the workout, the tenor workout. Oh,
That
Tenor
might-
workout.
Listen, that
That's
was
a good idea.
Has
It's
an
actually a
idea
good
been
idea.
born? I need a piece of that
Tenor
action.
workout.
So, all right, Zach, guitarist, producer, composer, layer of sound. You did the whole soundtrack for everything,
Yeah,
right? You
or-
kind of produced it and found the sounds and made that. So, do you do this too? Do you have to worry about acupuncture for guitarists? Probably, right? A little bit.
Definitely in a different way. And music production has a kind of creativity. It definitely pulls at certain muscles and places in your body when you're birthing an idea from nothing. Like that takes a kind of pulls energy from you. So when we were doing the future classics, kind of listening to these pop songs and making arrangements that are orchestral and could appeal to a classical audience, that definitely not doesn't pull from my vocal cords, but definitely from my heart and left right
Right,
brain
absolutely.
and yeah.
You shared the stage with Vanessa Carlton. Wasn't that fun?
It was
I mean,
wonderful.
fantastic.
so we do a segment on the Grand Reality called Inside the Practice Room, just kind of talking about which is kind of what we're having here,
Sure.
the creative process. And, we just, you can't deny that you need time, you need to reserve time, you need to schedule time around it. It's it's artistry, and it just doesn't come from anywhere.
Yeah.
It has to come
Yeah.
from somewhere.
Mirrors life.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, that's great. So what are your most recent projects? Things where you've performed, the stuff you're doing online?
Sure.
Where you performed recently? Would you like to start talking about the Brothers page?
Sure. I
And
mean,
your,
Brothers Page, we've been focusing a lot on social media. That's the big word now because there's no denying that with the potential to reach an arena's worth of people at the click of a button, that's not something that artists can afford to ignore anymore. And I think that the rise over the past 2 decades has just been so dramatic. And it's been an inspiration for Forte also to say, how can we create these viral videos that are going to reach audiences that otherwise we would never have the potential to reach. But in particular, Zach and I have been really focusing on Instagram, and there are systems and there are algorithms that if you focus and understand, you can break into audiences that you truly otherwise would never reach in a lifetime. And it's such a pleasure when we ask them, hey, like, where are you guys from? And it's literally like everywhere in the entire world. New Jersey, Kenya, Afghanistan, Libya, Paris, like it just keeps going. You start to realize, wow, the potential to reach people has just skyrocketed over the past few decades. So I think that's going to be the biggest thing that needs to start being integrated into music education also, is not only leaving people with an incredible degree, but an incredible social following that's grown within those
and
structures.
the knowledge to communicate with it, and
Absolutely.
the knowledge to be
Totally.
authentic with it.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right?
That's right.
And it's like learning a new instrument. When you first are on an app, whether it's Instagram or anything, at first it feels very foreign and you don't feel comfortable. But if you really dedicate energy into making the app feel like home, like you do with your guitar or your voice, you really start to be able to put your heart into the app. I think a lot of people try it and they're like, oh, that's not for me. But that's like trying guitar for a week and saying you have to practice and really learn the instrument.
We have this Gen Next program here. There's conference sessions that our college kids are going to. Maybe we should have you back and doing one of those sessions.
We'd love
That could
to.
be really
We'd
cool,
love
yeah.
to.
I
Fantastic.
think, Claire, note to self, or have them come back and help us with that. Because again, they're all training to be really, really good musicians.
Yeah.
But then what is the...
Well, this
Yeah,
Yep.
that's
This-
half of it. You got to get
Pathway.
people to see what you're
What
doing.
is the
and this
pathway?
new this is calling on the artist to become this new kind of hybrid artist, businessman, advertiser, because there's your talent and then there's the ways in which you reach that talent out into the world to gain new audiences for it. And those are actually way more separate than most people know. Those are two very separate things.
Then how does the authentic artist
Yeah.
communicate in a way that is pure and really the authentic to the art, what you guys have done
Sure.
with your voice.
Sure.
How about you? Where have you recently performed?
Most recently,
lot.
actually, I had a very, very interesting 2017, 2016, actually, with debuts at Covent Garden, the Royal Opera in London. With the new work, actually, it was a world premiere of the only opera by legendary Indian sitarist and composer Ravi Shankar.
Wow. Is it
And,
coming to the States? Are they going to bring it?
Well, I'm hoping
And
so.
anybody, one
there
of
was
Dallas or one of the Houston, one of the opera companies?
Well,
What-
actually, the way it was set up was it was a semi-staged work, and it was done in collaboration between the London Phil and the Royal Opera House, and it incorporated Eastern classical musicians, Eastern classical dancers. The London Phil playing obviously Western classical realization of these ancient Indian.
Did you have to sing microtonals and all sorts of?
No, I didn't, and
no?
we were terrified because all of the singers were opera singers, and I was actually the only Indian-born opera singer or Indian opera singer there in the cast, and of course, prior to getting in, I thought, I need to figure out my past really quickly because I got to acquaint myself with where
Well,
I came from.
It's a whole different modality, right?
it
It's a
absolutely
different
is.
tonal language, but they
Absolutely.
didn't call you to task.
No, in fact, when we asked about it, the conductor who is British actually said, "Don't worry about it. People who are coming, they're going to know who you are and what you are and what you're capable of and what you're not." And I was like, "That's the key. We're not." And I was
Good,
like, "You know what?
yeah.
We're good."
Good parameters.
Oh, yeah,
right,
exactly.
right.
And it was an absolute fusion, because the thing was that what really made it succeed was the fact that everybody stayed true to what it is they brought to the table. It didn't feel as though they really needed to change it a whole lot, and it was just collaborating on it was jaw dropping. I mean, we're everyone's sitting there marveling at the dancers, marveling at the
Well, I
Indian
hope
classical.
it comes
unbelievable.
across the pond.
There was a
Yeah.
lot of interest immediately thereafter, so I
Yeah.
think it might tour sooner than later.
Great.
Yeah.
And what else?
Oh, I was in Hong Kong for Carmen. I had a string of Carmens actually last year, and it
In
was
what role?
Don Jose
Don
in Carmen,
Jose, I
and
would
it was fantastic. It's therapy actually, where I don't have to pay for because it's just this angsty downward spiral, emotional spiral of this character from the beginning to the end.
Oh yeah, it's a rough
Just-
opera
he's
emotionally.
just
No, it's
so
fantastic.
You got to be the worst person in the
Right,
world.
right.
just so rejected.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
poor guy. I mean, you feel
Right.
bad for him after a certain
I
point.
mean, it's so manipulated.
What's it like singing for Chinese audiences?
Oh, they love
They
Carmen.
loved it.
They are
love
crazy.
Carmen in particular.
They
Yeah.
love Carmen. I've spent a
Devoured it.
little time in China for NAMM business, and music education is really growing there. But of course, interacting a bit with the cultural community. They're just crazy,
crazy.
and they're producing singers
Unbelievable singers.
on tenors. Sorry, guys,
Yeah,
watch
yeah,
out.
yeah,
Absolutely.
competition.
That's what I think. I mean, I'm okay
Unbelievable.
if the field of competition shrinks a bit. On a very selfish note. At least for another. Like,
I mean,
10,
you
15
know-
years,
Keep it
they
level.
gotta-
But they're cranking, and I've
Yeah.
I've heard they're entering the international competitions and applying to all the conservatories
yeah.
on a level. It's so.
And I know.
So they're
just-
eating it up.
They're
yeah,
absolutely
yeah,
eating it up, and it's
yeah.
huge. I mean, in South Korea as well, because my teacher's studio has an influx of South Korean singers, specifically tenors actually, who used to be baritones, who come in and just tear it up. I mean, they're unbelievable, and and so we have conversations as to whether there's a nexus between a type of sound that's produced and how it may be tied to the language, linguistic ties. And I don't know if there's enough of a sample size, just generally to kind of do that study at this point, but it would definitely be worth
I
it.
would
There's
think
no doubt that Korean tenors have a Korean tenor sound. Like there are very specific sounds that
Right.
that come from these cultures.
Yeah.
It's just very different. There's nothing like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would think that they would love what Forte is doing too. I would think,
so.
it's like how do you go over and plant something over there?
Absolutely.
right?
We've been dying
Right.
to
It's
a
tour
dream,
in
yeah.
Asia and in Korea, and we've come very close a few times, and I hope that we get the opportunity to in the future. But one of our original members, Hana Ryu, who was with us for our first audition ever on America's Got Talent, and then suddenly had a visa issue and couldn't compete in the rest of the show, and that's when Sean Panikar stepped in, and it was one of those last minute things where they'd say, we want you guys to move on in this competition. You have 3 days to find a replacement, otherwise we can't have you go on anymore.
Wow.
And that last minute energy has always spiraled kind of like a search in me to find somebody, you know? And you know, today was an example of that, performing with
Right.
Alok and Victor, and on this CD in particular, the Future Classics, we have both Sean and Hannah returning for the second CD, and his voice is just tremendous. You know, it's unlike anything I've ever seen before, and his pop sensibility, his ability to merge and kind of combine those genres is just unparalleled. So I hope we get the chance to tour Korea.
But it's cool that you're developing sort of a stable of forte tenors, right?
I think so.
That are
I
all
think
sort
so.
of,
I think it's
you
fantastic.
know,
It's
I
really
mean,
cool.
they're, you know, you kind of, you know,
Yeah.
who can, I
Yeah.
think it's, and maybe you'll have them all together
I would
sometime.
love that. And you know what? I
Would you
think
put
that there's,
NAMM on the list for that?
I mean, hey,
I
next
mean,
year
we could-
if NAMM wants to do
yeah.
a big Forte reunion,
Yeah.
that would be amazing.
That would be
because
really
we have
fun.
never all sang together before, and I think that
You might need a bigger boat. You
it might
need
need a
bigger
little bigger boat. But there's an element of the classical world that's always kind of looked down on crossover a little bit. And
Still?
I think the tide is
1918,
changing.
Let's get going.
I think the
right?
tide is changing, and I think when people can remember tenors like Richard Tucker were borderline crossover at the time when they
Yep.
would make public appearances like that. Obviously, Pavarotti brought recitals into arenas. That's not normal, and Bocelli continues to kind of carry that throne from Pavarotti. But as far as the legit classical world, I would love for Forte to be an excuse for very trained classical singers to kind of just throw it all aside and have fun and rock out with modern themes. Because I think that's where you get such an incredible mergence of style and training and bringing truly the greatest Olympic voices in the world to the songs that are the most popular in the world. I think that's what's going to save the potential for future audiences within the genre. So,
Yeah, very, very wonderfully said,
Thank you.
Josh.
Thank you.
Truly, and
Yeah,
I think you know,
absolutely.
stay with it.
yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
I mean, ideas are born for a reason, right? And they develop. Sometimes they you know, you have to push rocks up a little hill.
Sure.
But you know, I look back at our music education advocacy work the last 15 years. You know, there's rocks to push up. But we're
Absolutely.
we're creating a mindset
Yep.
about it. You know, just by simply doing it. I can't resist the chance to ask just a bit about who your favorite tenors are.
Oh, wow.
You know, because after all,
Wow.
you're world-class tenors.
Well, it's-
So who's the world-class tenor's favorite tenor?
I mean,
Over history and the sound and the,
For technique, it always is Pavarotti for me. But again, as a young Jewish tenor, Richard Tucker is just such a prime example. These days, I just came back from my third Jonas Kaufmann recital, and there's a voice. My
Yeah.
God, just unlike
Really?
anything in the world.
Huh.
And I've been very blessed to be able to see the greatest tenors in the world. Throughout the past few years at the Met, you got Polenzani, you got
Yep.
Juan Diego, you've got a lot of different people. Who would you say?
I mean, like, and it would depend on exactly what the criteria is. I mean, old school, I love Lauri Volpi, who was, he actually was one of Corelli's mentors.
It's a hefty sound.
It's a hefty
And
sound.
for you, as like borderline spinto.
Right, but
yeah.
but what I really loved about his sound was that he was this broad sound that he would scale back and really learn how to sing on a fine thread, and that's what he imparted to Corelli, who had even a broader sound, but he was able to do some amazing things vocally. So on a technical level, those guys are in a certain boat. Of course, Pavarotti, because Pavarotti's Pavarotti, and it's just sunshine coming
it's
through.
kind of
So
one of a kind.
it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Today, it would definitely, for me, be Jonas Kaufmann. It's for a number of reasons. One is he insisted, went through a change, vocal change, and then insisted that something that wasn't quite working for him, even though it was the conventional way of thinking about technique and whatnot, he said, you know what, I need to do it the way I need to do it so I can convey this full panoply of emotion, which is what it's about, communication. And so he kind of went through this change. It was a risk. It was one that turned out to do wonderful things for him in his career. And he continues to make choices and has the courage of his convictions. And that's really something else. And in an industry and in an art form that is so ensconced in history and tradition, to step into something and say, I'm going to respect it and do that, but here's how we're going to twist it. And that's kind of what's, kind of the reciprocal benefit for classically trained singers doing crossover stuff, is that it frees you up and it kind of takes you away from that sense of, this staid sense of tradition. So it's done how it needs to be done, and you after a while feel boxed in.
Right.
So when you kind of shake things up a bit, you kind of bring that sense of adventure, adventure spirit to the traditional rap, and then it becomes new again.
And we have to remember that at the time, classical music was pop music.
Exactly.
That was the popular
That was
music.
it.
That was the hangout music.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's like,
It's like the looking at the girls music.
Right.
I mean, you would
Yeah,
think about
exactly.
the early classical.
oh my
solo-
God, have you seen that? Have you
I
heard that
know.
new Puccini?
I mean, did you see the Duke's niece at intermission?
Yo, Donizetti just dropped this amazing piece, man. You gotta check it out.
Oh, well, I mean, there was a great story
Yeah, and
about
the count, he's got a really cool carriage, man.
there was, I mean, to that point, there's a great story about Verdi doing Rigoletto while he was writing that. And it ended up debuting in Venice, I believe. And so all the gondolieri were out there, and they would listen to the songs that were happening, the operas, arias, and whatnot that were happening, and they'd sing them in the boats while they were, ferrying their passengers. And Verdi did not want La Donna Immobile to get out there until that opening. So they buried that piece even in rehearsals.
Wow.
So they wouldn't be
I
heard.
love it.
Well, if Instagram existed, he would have had some
Yeah,
trouble.
exactly.
Thankfully,
Oh,
it
you
didn't.
guys are
That's
great. I mean, talking about tenors for you all, and a little bit for me is like, other people talking about soccer players,
Sure.
right? I mean, it's really great. So last topic is, we are really committed to music education and also sort of growing music education and keep pushing the access and opportunity, the options that are available in school music, first of all, to be available, and then a lot of opportunities are growing and expanding. Like there's more class guitar in schools now than ever before. There's technology, there's recording studios, there's some songwriting, there's mariachi music, and so the whole idea of how do we encourage young men to know more about what maybe they can potentially do with their voices.
Sure.
So it's not, let's say, a choice. Oh, it's just not a place for me because the profile of what is done there doesn't match who I think I am.
I think
Right?
a lot of times people hold singing up to a standard that they just imagine it to be so impossible when really every person has a voice and everybody starts from where they start and grows from that point. 9 times out of 10, you hear people say that they got started in their choirs in school. So already there's a pool, there's a tremendous pool of people that are getting inspired by educational programs. But again, if you're going to inspire the masses, then that style has to integrate into pop culture. It has to reach more people to inspire more people. So that's all that I could say is that, opera concepts need to start merging, back to, controversial, but we need to start merging back towards tonality and back to, a little bit away from the atonal movement. People have to be able to hum a melody in their head. It has to be something that, again, like when classical music was rising, these were infectious melodies that people couldn't stop humming to themselves. And I think for it to become accessible to the public, we need to be smarter with the subject matter that we create operas about, and we need to make sure that they are melodic and beautiful and irresistible. So that's my 2 cents.
Like
But
La Boheme, like Tosca.
absolutely, when you say those melodies come to mind. But if
yeah.
you were to mention one of 100 works over the past 20 years, it would be very difficult to think of a melody from that. So that's yeah.
I absolutely agree with it. Absolutely. And I think the exposure and general exposure that's happening today too is something that's kind of creating a safety in numbers thing. I mean, there's the the pre-existing stigma of guys feel a little bit reticent about singing and opening their mouths and whatnot, even if there's something there. I think it's going. I'm hoping, but I feel that it is kind of going by the wayside a little bit more.
I think the a cappella movement has helped with that.
Yeah,
You
it
know,
has. Yeah.
I mean, there's a
Yeah.
ton of informal acapella.
Yeah.
Right.
We
which
just
I
need
think
some
is the key.
opera-pella, right?
Right.
Acapella.
But you know,
Opportunities in opera-pella.
Right.
Well, the thing
Oh,
with
dear.
opera too is I think it's also, and it's really interesting to hear people's stories as to how they came to opera. And you got folks who kind of, it's what they were kind of, they got bit by the bug when they were kids and they stuck with it. You're like, okay, that makes sense. And then you got folks who just kind of backed into it. Football players who, professional football players who decided, hey, I have this other interest and decided to go watch a musical theater piece, then heard opera, and then all of a sudden they're at the Met, and singing at the Met. I was like, really? So it's such a diverse field from which opera singers are drawn that it keeps it interesting. But I don't think there's going to be any dearth of opera singers going to the. And I don't think there should be, but I don't think there will be, because I think the more people are exposed to it, it's something that either clicks with them or doesn't. And once
Yeah.
it does, you're song.
Yeah.
You're
And it's an
gonna-
acquired taste.
Yeah.
It takes time to
Right.
develop a love and appreciation for opera, and a patience for it, and a meditation of seeing the opera, finally turning the phone off and getting to, be swept away. That's a luxury these days, and it's becoming rarer and rarer. So
But I have to say, studying your work and getting to know you, I think every teacher should just have this in their curriculum to show what's possible,
Mhm.
just what the voice can do.
you
Whether-
got to start
whether-
where they're interested, and
Whether
then
you
work from
ever
there.
from there.
ever
Yeah.
go to an opera ever, just know that it's a really great, beautiful development. Zach, you wanted to add something?
I was just gonna say that I feel at the very core of the issue of young men kind of being hesitant to sing, which is a very real thing. I think it's that young men are very instinctually concerned with being cool and kind of being socially accepted, and to try things that make you kind of exposed and vulnerable, like singing can do, is kind of a very scary. It's a very
Because you
scary
kind
thing
of
to
passed
do.
through that era.
Yeah,
when,
because
you- when
when
Grandma
I was
said you
younger,
had
yeah,
to be right.
I was so
you know.
afraid of it not being cool, but I felt how it helped me grow and evolve in a way that was essential. So I think there's this very delicate, sensitive moment when kids are first introduced to singing by music educators in school. And like, unfortunately, it's usually not introduced in a way where it's very cool, which is a very real thing. And I know personally, if someone's insecure about singing, there are ways, technology and electronic music, which is kind of the new music of our generation, there's so many things you can do to excite students and show them, like Kanye West and these singers are singing in harmony with technology in a way where if you put that kind of a mic in front of a kid and they sing, they'll go, whoa, this is cool. Whereas if you sing do, re, mi, fa, they'll be like, this isn't cool. But they're instinctually concerned with being cool. So introducing music in a way within the curriculum that lawfully appeals to that, I think would make young men less hesitant
and then
to
lead
sing.
them down a path
Yeah,
towards the muscular. When I hear you guys sing, the word muscular comes
Sure,
through.
sure.
because it's the Olympic, right? It's
Right.
It's a masculine cry.
it's
and-
it's like it's really that's irresistible too.
And it's powerful.
And that's
yeah.
cool.
Totally, exactly.
I mean, it's
Yeah,
like you
yeah.
lead
Totally.
Yeah.
you lead down the path of coolness,
Right.
right? To
So, yeah.
cooler, right?
yeah.
So,
And
so
that's what Forte is.
yeah,
Forte
it is.
the-
I'm
Forte is to a certain audience what EDM is to the new generation.
It's
It hits a level of power where their brains can finally stop thinking. And I think we're all struggling to focus and unplug and have something that's powerful enough to captivate our
I
attention.
know you just, as I stood backstage in front of stage during rehearsal and then backstage, just like, it just sounds so good. It's like,
That helps.
That
You
does
know,
help,
That helps
right?
a little bit.
it's
yeah.
just
yeah.
like, oh man.
Well, thank
it's
you.
like,
Thank you so much
know.
Thank you
for
very,
having
very
us and
much.
giving us the
Yeah.
opportunity.
Oh, I loved
because
it.
there are
Totally.
certain places
Yeah.
where this style of epicness is appropriate.
The style
of
of
epicness. And there are places where this epicness, is very much not
is
appropriate.
only said by a tenor would ever say the style. What style of epicness am I today?
I'm sorry, listen, if you're
Right?
going to sing a Game of Thrones theme, it's got to be epic
What
or
style?
get out of here.
What day of the week of my epicness am I emerging?
Yeah.
I'm doing a little tenor pretend here.
Yeah,
right?
that
I think
is
that's
it. You
actually
wake
right
up
on
and
point.
we wake up and
Pretty
we all have
much.
to measure how epic we're
Exactly.
feeling
Yes,
on that given
yes.
day.
Am I epic or am I non-epic today?
Epic enough, Is this
But-
shirt
yeah.
epic enough?
Is
or
this-
these,
And funny enough, like epicness is one of the most universal qualities of classical music.
Yeah.
And what we've seen in classical crossover is it's usually not very epic and usually very romantic.
Yeah, think
So,
about it. What
yeah.
record labels support within classical crossover is entirely romance based. But what's so exciting about opera is epicness.
It's
The
people
essential
throw
trick-
themselves off of parapets.
Yeah,
Totally.
but
and that's the end.
but those
Totally.
essential traits that
That's
work
all
in
that
opera aren't merged in with classical crossover. Because it's record labels having a very specific vision of what they think will sell. They need
Yeah.
to see it proven before they can invest in it, and that makes sense because that's their job, and that's why we're blessed
Well,
to be able to do these things
I'm
independently.
telling
so.
you here, guys, I'm
Yeah.
talking at music education. You stay the course.
Thank you so much.
All right?
Such
You
a
stay
treat.
the course. The NAMM show is an epic
Absolutely.
experience. Rock music is epic. I mean, when these
Totally.
people are dressed up in epic proportion here to come to.
Totally.
So good luck. Stay strong. Stay
Thank
in
you.
touch.
Thank you so much. We
Come
will.
back to NAMM. Who knows? We might have to work on a young men's singing project.
I would love that.
And
yeah.
we'll
Find
fo-
your forte. Hashtag find your forte.
Find your forte.
There it is.
So we'll send them to your website to listen
Yes,
to you
please
sing.
do check
all right?
out youtube.com/Forte Tenors. And if you search Game of Thrones opera, it's very likely the first thing that will come up on YouTube.
We
and
could hum it as we're going out, maybe.
you can hum it. Well,
Right.
well, yeah. I mean, with Game of Thrones, we started learning how to speak the language, and Skori de Maliti Tim Tir Tim, and then it turns into Skori de Maliti Tim Tir Tim, and it's like, to me, the words fit the theme in a way where we just had to do it. So I hope that you guys go check out our
Right.
Game of Thrones theme.
So what a fun to talk to Forte, the members of Forte. Their new CD coming out very soon, the Future Classics, but they're all over the web and Instagram. And thank you for being a part of Talking at Music Education, a podcast of the NAMM Foundation.